In today's episode, we are joined by Jack Kelly, otherwise known as Pistons Jack, to talk about, are the Detroit Pistons an elite team for this upcoming season? We'll break it down. Today's episode, Locked On Pistons Podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Kuka Hill. I've been covering the Detroit Pistons over the last 4 years for the Locked On Network, been a credential media member over the last 3 years. I appreciate all of you guys who make Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. The everydayers, the first listeners, I appreciate all the support over the years and continued support. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. You'll hear a little bit more about Monarch Money a little bit later, but let's get into it, right into it here. We're joined by, everyone knows, Pistons Jack, the best, the most famous outside of Detroit fan there is. Everyone knows about Jack, man. We've had him on the podcast before. Jack, how you doing, man? I appreciate you coming on.
Hey, appreciate you having me on, Koo. I was thinking earlier today, I was like, this is the third off season in a row I've joined the podcast. I think I've been on 3 or 4 times. But I'm really excited to be on during an off season to talk about a playoff team, a team that, you know, we in the past off seasons, we've spoken about the potential, but we're actually talking about a playoff team. So I'm really excited to be back and to talk about an exciting team.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a different feeling around here, and it's something that I feel like everyone, including myself, you, fans, I think everyone's getting accustomed to, because it has been a while for the Pistons to be as serious as they are right now, which is going to lead us into our first segment where we're going to talk about the Pistons. Are they an elite team this upcoming year? Should they be considered contenders in the East? Also, we'll eventually talk about later in the podcast most intriguing players for the Detroit Pistons. And then I want to get Jack's thoughts on whether the Pistons should extend Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey. That feels like the final questions of the offseason, so we'll definitely get to that. But, Jack, let's go ahead and start with, are the Pistons an elite team? So The Athletic came out with a power ranking. They had the Pistons as the 10th best team in the NBA. I saw it. I was like, oh, that's pretty hefty praise right there. I thought that was, if you would have just told me off the top to just say a random number, I don't know if I would have said 10, but seems like they are some pretty big fans of the Pistons. I've seen some ESPN guys talking about the Pistons. I just was listening to Zach Lowe and Howard Beck, I believe it was, talk about the Pistons potentially as a top 4 team in the East. So where are you at, Jack, after everything that's happened this offseason? Where do you think the Pistons stand in the Eastern Conference right now?
I truly believe they are, they can be a top 4 team in the East. Like, I think they're below the Cavs. I'm with people who say they might be behind the Magic, even though we're going to see what they look like. But I think they can be right there with the Hawks, the Atlanta Hawks, around that 4-5. I could see the Hawks finishing 4 and the Pistons 5th, but I am surprised to see, I will be honest, like places like The Athletic, ESPN, talking about the Pistons in this way. But at the same time, I probably shouldn't be, because I truly think they have some elite facets to their game as a team. Like, I think what we saw defensively from them from pretty much January onwards, and that coincides with Ausar Thompson becoming, who we're probably going to touch on in the next segment. But I think what they can bring defensively can be truly elite. And then you mix in where Cade Cunningham has taken his game to and where he can continue to improve. I truly think, I don't know if I'm ready to say right now that they are an elite team. I think they've got to prove a little bit more. But I think when you look at this roster and you look at the young core and the progression, I think a lot of us expect them to take this season. Like, even if like no one takes that big time leap of, say, Duran, Ivey, or Ausar, I still think they're all going to get better. And I do think one of them will take a leap. But I think they can be in that conversation come trade deadline where we're talking about them as an elite team. But I think they've just got to prove it a little bit more, especially with some of the players they lost. I'm a little bit higher on the offseason they've had so far, but I understand those that aren't. But I think they've got to prove it a little bit more. But I would not be shocked at all to see them finish top 4 in the East and be a top 10 overall team in the NBA.
Yeah, I think 4th and 5th. I think between 4 and 6 in the East is probably where I would have them. I think that's where their range is going to be. I would agree that the teams I have above them in the East right now are Cleveland, New York, and Orlando. I just really love what Orlando did this offseason. and they were just destroyed by injuries this past year. So I feel like if they were healthy, they would have gave the Pistons a run for their money for that 6th spot. I really like the Orlando Magic team, and I like Desmond Bane. So I think they probably will be ahead of the Pistons. But like you said, we do have to see it play out and see how they actually fit and all that. But to buffer the point of how good the Pistons can be this upcoming year, whether they are a 4th, 5th seed in the East, this past year after January 1st, they had a top 5 defense in the NBA. And they had the 7th best net rating in the NBA after January 1st. And that is basically correlated with Ausar Thompson going in the starting lineup. Defense completely changed. And they became not just one of the best defenses. They had the 7th best net rating in the entire NBA. So how much of that is real? How much of that is sustainable for an entire season? I think the Pistons had. Go ahead. Did you have something you want to say?
I think it is real, and I truly do. And I know that it kind of tapered off just before the playoffs. I want to say in like the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, those numbers dip. But like I was listening to podcasts in January, February, and like we're looking at the numbers that you just outlined. Like the net rating was like, so like you said, top 7 for a long time. Like I feel like when you and I have podcasts before, like we talk about sample sizes and like how good it is to have this 100-minute thing, like, or you have this, 10-game stretch, but that was like a genuine, like 35-game stretch, I want to say, which, yes, is not the biggest sample. You want to see more. You want to see it from start to finish. But like that was legit. And I think you saw in the playoffs, like this Pistons team, it's funny how like, I don't know, with Detroit, the successful Pistons teams of the past, like there's always this like alignment. And it's like we saw in the playoffs, like this team's going to be built on rebounding, defense, physicality, athleticism. And of course, they're led by Cade, who is like a mercurial playmaking. Like he's just a superstar. But it's like this team's going to be built on like grit, toughness. And like that's why I believe so much in the defense. You look at JB Bickerstaff, like that's who he is as a coach. He had a really good interview at Summer League, I think, forgetting the podcast, but just talking about that identity and how important it is. And like, I truly believe in the defense. And I think there's an offensive upside here that we could see that really propels them to that elite. But I believe in that stretch we saw that you outlined from January through to maybe early March.
No, yeah, I believe in it too. I think the defense, I completely agree with you about this team's going to be built on defense because and this may be because I'm too high on this player, but I really feel like I'm not based off the numbers. I think Ausar in of himself we've seen it now for 2 straight years. Because even when he was on the court, his rookie year, the Pistons were a top defense when he's been on the floor through 2 years of his career. So I almost feel like that just in and of himself, he's like a top 10 defense just alone. Like he just warps the team's defense. In December, they had the 28th ranked defense. He comes back, they have a top 5 defense. It's crazy. So I definitely agree their defense is going to be maybe if it's not top 5, there's going to be top 10 defense. It's going to be a really good defense. And I think it could be top 5 still. Where they're going to have to improve on is obviously within their half-court offense. They were one of the worst half-court offenses in the league this past year, but that's where potentially one of the most intriguing players that we'll talk about coming up maybe comes into play. Jaden Ivey. Hopefully he comes back improved. He can help in that regard. Maybe Ausar comes back improved. He can handle the ball a little bit more. But I think this team, because of how, 1, the East is pretty weak right now, and 2, because the Pistons are kind of at the perfect time. As the East is getting weaker, the Pistons are getting stronger, and their young guys are kind of coming into their own. I definitely think they could finish 4th in the Eastern Conference. It's just going to come down to, it's not going to be because of, like I talked about this in the last podcast, like, last year, I think people kind of underscore how much of that season was really, like how much credit Malik Beasley really should get for this past year, because he really carried the half-court offense a lot of the times with just insane shot making, the amount, the volume and the efficiency he had in some of these. It was just insane. This year, it's not going to be because of Duncan Robinson. If they make it, it's not going to be because of Karis LeVert. It's not going to be because of Tobias Harris. It will be because Ausar or Jaden Ivey or Jalen Duren or even Cade takes another leap and another step forward. And I think that's obviously what Trajan wants. That's what Trajan told us. And that's why he's had the offseason he had. If the Pistons are going to be good, if they're going to take this next step, it will be because of the young players. And quite a few of them have given reason to believe they will continue to get better. And I think they definitely will be in play for the 4th seed. I don't know about elite, like you said. Maybe elite maybe is a little strong right now. But, hey, it's in their cards, man. It's in their cards. We'll see what they do.
It is, and I know our next segment is most intriguing, and I don't want to get into it too much, but Ausar Thompson, even in the playoffs, had like one of the best net ratings, and like for the Pistons, like you said, his impact is undeniable. Like he can like score 2 points, and just what he brings, it's incredible on the ball, defensively, off the ball, and I'm not even like trying to like glaze him here. Like it's you look at the numbers, him like with Jalen Duren, they completely proved me wrong. Like those two and Zach Lowe, like you listened to the podcast today, he was glowing about the chemistry Ausar and JD have. And I think a lot of it, I don't want to discredit JD here, but I think Ausar really helps bring the best out in Duran defensively as well, in terms of just making his life easier, to be honest, and allowing him to play to more of his strengths. But Ausar, he's special. And it's like he does fill up the box score, but it's also like he does so many things. The Thompson twins are just like, I can't think of players like them in the past. Like they had the
I don't feel like I've ever
Iguodala.
seen him.
Yeah, like there was the Iguodala comp for Ausar, but it's like he's even different to that because it's special. It's exciting.
They're just different athletes, man. They're just like I've only been doing like this draft stuff since like I got here with Lockdown in 2021. And I'm not the biggest college fan, but when it comes around in the offseason, the Pistons were bad, and obviously I had to look at a lot of top prospects. The most fun I ever had was watching both Ausar and Amin, and I can't imagine anyone else will ever like give me more of a fun time to just like watch as prospects, because they were just they're just insane. They're generational athletes. It's just the things they do on a court is just unreal. But coming up,
Ridiculous.
we'll talk about the most intriguing players, and Ausar Thompson will be brought up. There is another player that will certainly be brought up, and it might be Cade Cunningham's backcourt mate. We'll talk about that coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building your wealth. Have you ever looked at your spending and been surprised about how much you've spent on one particular thing? For me, it was delivery service food. Look, all of us get lazy, sit at home, maybe don't want to go to the grocery store or whatever, but I was doing it just way too much. And I didn't notice until I got Monarch Money. It helped me budget a lot better. Not saying I went completely away from DoorDash. DoorDash is still great, but definitely to kind of temper it down a little bit, help me budget a little better. And that's the kind of thing you can do with Monarch Money. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDINNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDINNBA for 50% off your first year with Monarch Money. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. But Jack, let's go ahead and get into the most intriguing players for the Detroit Pistons this year. I'll let you go first. I'm assuming there's going to be two players I know we're going to bring up in this, and it's the same two players that it seems like everyone's bringing up. So I want to let you go first and take it wherever way you want to go with this.
Okay, I might surprise you a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about Jalen Duren, because I think for me, heading into last season, when I looked at the Pistons' young core, and for those, it's Cade, it's Ivey, it's Ausar, Ron, and JD. I had JD at the bottom. I will be honest. And his second season in the NBA, it wasn't really good for any of the Pistons' young core, but it just left a lot for me there to think, does he have it? Is he going to just be Andre Drummond 2.0 with like just maybe not having that he maybe not be that defensive anchor? And he's still got a lot to prove there. But what we saw from him in 2025 or this year has me so intrigued for like his ceiling, like the playmaking we knew about, but to see him like that playoff series against the Knicks. Obviously, he was matched up on Cat, which is kind of like the worst possible matchup for him. Yeah. But I thought as that series progressed, the rebounding, the free throw shooting, game 6, I think you were there, Koo. He was knocking down like clutch free throws in a tight game. And I know it's just free throw shooting, but like that was huge for me. The rim protection I thought got better. And he obviously he excels more with the SAR in the lineup. But how good can he be? Because I truly believe, as much as when you look at this young core, everyone probably, some people might say they need a spacing five. They need a spacing five. I think Cade thrives the most with a lob threat. Like, and maybe you could say it's Ausar, but I'm not sure about Ausar being like a heavy usage screener is ideal. Like, I think Cade needs a really good screener, and I think him and Jalen Duren have a very close relationship off the court as well. And I think JD is super intriguing to me in terms of how real was what we saw from January to April. I believe it's real, but I think if you look at the first, I want to say month and a half, 2 months of the season, I think he's got to come out and show that that is truly who he is. And I think it is who he is, and I think he can get better. But I think he really can, like, as he gets better, I think he has really solid touch around the basket. Like, I'm not saying he's ever going to be like close to a 20-point per game scorer. But I just think there's so much potential there. And like, I don't want to do the thing where I go, oh, he's only 21, but I think he is still only 21. So there's so much there with him. And I think just for me personally, with where I was at with him prior to last season to now, I'm incredibly intrigued to see where he can get to.
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned, you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier about the duo between him and Ausar. I think that's what I'm most looking forward to figuring out this year, is because, like you mentioned, it's not, you don't want to take away from JD, because JD did get a lot better after January. He was much better defensively. He was much more active offensively, impactful offensively. Then even in the playoffs against what I would say was probably the worst matchup. Was he perfect? No, but he was much better than I think you could expect a 21-year-old to be in his first playoff series. So this is not to take away from JD, but when you mentioned the numbers earlier, when you have Ausar and Duren on the floor, the Pistons have dominated those minutes. Now, it's a lot of it has to do with the defense. They're rebounding, like you mentioned. They're one of the best second chance point teams with those two on the floor. I believe Clean the Glass had their starting lineup in the half court was bad without putback. It was just straight up bad. But once you included putbacks, I believe it jumped up to like the 89th percentile in points per possession. So it's just they dominate in that regard. But once you take Ausar off the floor, the numbers still suggest, okay, the defense is still a work in progress. So that's what I want to see from Duren. That's what makes it so intriguing to me, is that, okay, Duren, we know that at the very least the half court issue or the half court concerns, maybe there's some questions about can the half court reach top offensive level, whatever, and we'll see if they can improve and get that. But we know that you two can work defensively. When Ausar is not on the floor, can you hold down the fort? Can you improve within yourself defensively to where you can help the Pistons defensively without needing, Ausar on the floor? Now, not to say you want to put a bunch of bad defenders and say, here you go, carry a lineup, but can you keep the fort alive? Does it not fumble when he comes off the floor? So I definitely think that's the most intriguing part for me with Duren. I think he's good. I definitely think he's improved. I just want to see, can you show me that you are better still when Ausar is off the floor? The next player I do want to get into, because I've talked about Ausar a ton, and I'm sure we'll get into him, but I want to talk about Ivey. I want you to get into Ivey a little bit, because I think all my listeners would all obviously call me the Ivey skeptic. You don't get a bunch of rainbows and sunshine from me when it comes to Ivey. So when I have guests on that do like Ivey a ton, I want to make sure we give him his flowers. So go ahead and talk to me about Ivey, about why he's so intriguing for the Pistons this upcoming year.
I mean, I think Zach Lowe said it. He said Jaden Ivey is the most intriguing player in the East for him. Or maybe it wasn't most intriguing. It was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago. But it's because who is Jaden Ivey? I love Jaden Ivey, and I think we all know the blueprint.
I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah,
because it really does feel like 4 years in, we're still asking the question, who is Jaden? And of no fault of his own, really. He gets hurt. Cade gets hurt second year. It's like we have even, despite it being year 4, you still just don't even have the sample size with him.
And it's just been crazy. Like, there was the Monty Williams thing, which we don't need to go into. Then even just with the young core as a whole, like Cade missed year 2, Jaden's rookie season. We know what happened to Jaden last season. Ausar missed, all the time he missed. So it's just been like hard to get a read. And unfortunately, Jaden is the young player that missed the entire playoff run and pretty much 80% of the Pistons' really strong part of their entire campaign. I think he's shown strides to be a really good off-ball player, which fits nicely alongside Cade on offense. He shot, I think, in those 30 games, 45% catch and shoot threes, 41% on 5 attempts overall. I think you see the vision with him being someone who can drive and finish and bend defenses and become like a drive and kick to the corner. But he's got to improve the finishing. I think Nikias Duncan said it, and I couldn't agree more. Like, I think JI, to improve his finishing, and he's just overall finishing the paint, needs to like figure out a floater. So he's not taking so many tough looks. But he's the guy who can generate, in theory, a ton of free throw looks for himself. It's just putting it all together. And like we said, like, I think I'm a huge Jaden Ivey fan, and sometimes on my videos I get a lot of comments about being a hater, and I'm like, I love JI. But
his
just
fans
like,
are very, very,
yeah,
very strong.
yeah. So it's been really surprising. Like, I feel like I try and push the best of JI, but it's just like, you just need to see, like, he'll have these 10-game stretches. Like, I think just before he got that horrible injury, he had like an 8-game stretch where the percentages were like 60% from the field, 50% from three, putting up 20 a night. He will do that. And then it's just, there's some lean patches. There'll be a lean week for every 2 good weeks, or the flip side. So he's so intriguing, because I think from the reason I wanted the Pistons to draft him on draft night, and I still remember that was one of my favorite moments at the draft, because I didn't think they were going to get him. And it was just like, him and Cade, in theory, complement each other really well on offense, in theory. But due to context surrounding them, injuries, health, and just probably overall development, it just hasn't clicked. So we want to see it this season. We want to see, all I want is just like from opening night to the trade deadline, them to get 40 to 45 games of just data. And I believe it can be good, because we just haven't really been able to see it for so many reasons, which we've gone over. But he's so intriguing.
Yeah, and for a lot of the things you said, and if you guys haven't checked it out, Zach Lowe has talked about the Pistons on his last 2 podcasts, so make sure you guys go check it out. One was with Bill Simmons, one was with Nikias. Actually, 3. Nikias, Bill Simmons, and this last one with Howard Beck. Ivey is definitely he's the most intriguing player on the team this year. Like, just because there's so much unknown with him, and I feel like you mentioned it. I wrote a 2,000 word article on my Substack a few weeks ago, and you guys all loved it. I appreciate all the support on there. If you guys haven't checked it out, go check it out. The most deep, in-depth breakdown I've done. And Ivey, not only do I think he's the most intriguing, I think he's the most misunderstood player, because even on like the Zach Lowe show, there were some. I think it was Howard that kind of talked about, how much time does he need on the ball? Is he gonna be able to sacrifice on ball? And I'm like, where he thrives is off the ball. Like, he's been a really good off the ball player. It's on the ball where he's really, not been that great. Off the ball, I don't have any really concerns with him playing off the ball with Cade. He plays well off the ball. He's good at cutting into space. He's good as a catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He's good coming off handoffs. He's good attacking rotating defenses, bent defenses, and attacking in that way. It's like what you mentioned that Nikias brought up, that when he gets the ball in his hands, can he slow down? Can he make the right decisions in the in-between area? In this article I wrote down, I just wanted to bring up this one number, which is really what I want to see from Jaden Ivey. I just lost it. I'm so mad now.
That's okay. While you look for it, I just want to add on as well. I think JI has shown improvements with his handle and those things. He just needs to, going into year 4, and when we're talking contract extensions, like, it needs to become like real and an efficient part of his game. And I just want to add in as well, he last season was extremely clutch. Like, you can't discredit that. Not saying you were, but he was making shots down the stretch. So that's huge as well, to have a player like that.
No, yeah, he was definitely pretty clutch this past year with the game winner against the Kings. I forget was it the Raptors? He hit that that runner off the right, same foot, same hand finish on the right side of the floor. Incredibly tough. And then that Lakers game, I remember he had a bunch of clutch shots at the end of the game too. But the number I was looking at was, so Ivey finished in the 38th percentile as a ball handler in pick and roll possessions, scoring just 0.83 possessions or points per possession. That's not even so much where I'm like looking at it. The scoring, he does need to become, I think you're very much right, I should say, when it comes to, he needs to add a floater to his game. I think he needs to become a much better finisher, needs to add a floater, but I just think his decision-making in the in-between game is where he can really take the next level. That's where he has to improve on. Of the 74 players that have at least 4 possessions per game, as a pick and roll ball handler. He ranked 56th in field goal percentage, but he ranked 29th of 74 players in turnover frequency. He turned the ball over a lot. And I think it's not so much to do with, can he get to the paint? He's an instant paint touch. He can get there anytime he wants. It's just a matter of the processing. When he gets there, can he make the right decisions? Can he slow down a little bit? Because he always feels like he's going maybe a little too fast. Can he slow down a little bit? But like you said, he is intriguing. Whether you're a big fan of Ivey or if you're not a big fan, he is the most intriguing player in this team. Because if he hits this team, that's another player that that wasn't here last year really for the majority of the run, that can be here next year and help them take this next step. So if Ivey can just improve with the ball in his hands as an isolation scorer, as a pick and roll ball handler, it's honestly kind of, I hate to throw so many numbers out at people, but it's honestly kind of weird to me that, like, I think Ivey fits with Cade. Like, offensively, I think he very much fits with Cade. Like, he plays well off the ball. He tacked off the catch really well. Good spacer. But despite that, in their minutes, they were a minus 4.1 this past year. I know Nikias and Zach Lowe brought that up too, that they were, it's hard to like really get a grasp on it. But like you mentioned, we just haven't gotten a large sample size. We're going to get it this year, hopefully. And that's what makes him most intriguing to me. We're finally going to get the sample size. Can he take this next step? And can him and Cade be the backcourt of the future? And if they are, Pistons easily can be a fourth seed in the East.
Can I just ask you one question on Ivey just to wrap this up? What is like just with the Pistons specifically, to you, what does the peak version of Jaden Ivey look like in terms of fitting in with the team and helping this team just win games and be like a consistent Eastern Conference final threat?
So for me, what I believe is the best fit next to Cade, what I would most want next to Cade, if it's going to be Ivey has to become, for me, he can't just be good off of Cade. He has to be good with the ball in his hands. I think that's and we're going to get to see the sample size this year because they're giving him another chance at the backup point guard position. He's going to get a lot of those reps, I believe, as the ball handler. So I think his efficiency has to get much better when he goes inside the three-point line and as a decision maker. I think what the Pistons need is not just they need somebody else within the half court that can send Cade to the corner and be like, okay, I'm going to run the offense. I'm going to create a look for the team here. And then Cade doesn't have to be on ball as much as he is. Obviously, your best players are on ball. Like, that's going to happen. But I feel like even to Cade's, to star standards, Cade was maybe on the ball a little bit too much. Like, the turnovers kind of show it. I don't know if you want him on the ball that much. Ivey has to become, I want to see if he's going to be a consistent three-point shooter. He looked good this past year. But inside the arc, can he be a good finisher? Can he be a good, I mentioned earlier, he is an instant paint touch. He can get to the paint every single time he wants, all the time. It's just a matter of once he gets there, can he make something out of getting a paint touch? Getting a paint touch is incredibly valuable. It's one of the most important skills within your half-court offense in the modern NBA. But you have to be able to generate something of it. So whether he's generating a finish at the rim or if he's making the right reads and actually becoming a good playmaker, that's where I need to see from Ivey. Because then, like we're going to see, then you can stagger him. The minutes without Cade shouldn't be so bad. If Cade, is having an off night, or if you want to get Cade maybe some more off the ball looks, maybe a catch and shoot theory, something like that, you can put Ivey on ball, let him run the offense, and trust him to create good offense for you within the half court. That's where I think if you're going to go the combo scoring guard route, then he has to be able to be an on-ball playmaker as well. If you're going to go that route, that's what I think.
No, I'm with you. And I think I'm never going to expect him to be elite or, to be honest, even like a really good defender. But I'd like to see him get to a point where, on and off the ball, he can hold his own there consistently. Like, he's obviously got the build for it. We've spoken about it since they drafted him. But if he can improve that side, I think that helps him just fit in with this particular Pistons team as well.
Yeah. And lastly, I want to say this about Ivey. Can people please stop saying he doesn't fit with Cade offensively or he can't play off ball? That is literally where he is at. I don't know why. Like, I feel like people are just like they see his speed and how fast he is and how high he jumps and just assume he's great with the ball in his hands and not good off the ball. He's great off ball. That's where he's at his best. Attacking closeouts, attacking gaps, catching, shooting, off dribble handoffs. Like, that's where he's at his best. Like, I don't have any questions about that. I feel like people who have questions about that are just flatly wrong, to be honest. But coming up, If Jack wants to talk about Ausar a little bit, we will. But we're going to get into whether the Pistons should extend the two players we just talked about, Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey. They're both up for extensions. Will they extend them? We'll talk about it coming up. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, Jack, you want to talk about Ausar a little bit, or do you want to get straight into the extensions? We ran out of time. I know I kind of cut you off with Ausar.
No. I think Ausar, like, I think he's incredibly special, and I can't wait to see what he looks like after a full normal off season. Like, I think we spoke about it earlier. His impact is undeniable, whether he's scoring or not, even with how raw his offensive game can be at times. Like, he's like, outside of Cade, like, might be the most impactful player on the roster, just hands down. So I'm very excited to see him. And yeah, I think you do a great job of talking about Ausar's game. So I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, I do. Sorry is my guy. I can't lie. Yeah. Sorry is my guy. I think I quick point on Ausar. I think something that everyone needs to keep in mind as well is that he was dropped midseason after dealing with blood clots, having no offseason, having no training camp, was just dropped midseason to the Pistons and helped change their whole season around. If he did that with no training camp and no offseason, just imagine what he's going to look like with an offseason, with a training camp. Like, when he's able to play 30-plus minutes. Like, I can't wait. I think it's going to be some really special stuff. And I think that's why Zach Lowe has talked about him over and over again on the last 3 podcasts he's had. It kind of feels like the Detroit Pistons show over there on the Zach Lowe show recently. It's been fun.
I'm not used to
it. Right. All right, let's get into extensions, because this offseason is pretty much wrapped up. They had to move on from Malik, I should say. They got Duncan Robinson. They got Karis LeVert. The draft is done. Doesn't seem like there's any trades coming around the horizon. The only thing left, or that could be left, is an extension for either Jalen Duren or Jaden Ivey. They're both extension eligible. They will be restricted free agents this next summer. Jack, where are you at with these guys? We've had some quotes come out, some reports, some rumors come out about where the Pistons stand. I've kind of talked about where I've heard the Pistons stand with the extensions. Where do you stand with the extensions for either JI or JD?
I think if you can get them, this is the easy answer. If you can get them on quote unquote team friendly deals, I would extend both. Now, I don't think like either of them will probably want to accept what those numbers could be. Like, maybe I'll just start on Jalen Duren, because I think it's a bit of an easier conversation. Like, I think for me, if you could get JD signed to a 4-year, $100 million deal, I'm actually pretty comfortable with that. I genuinely am. I think for what he offers, what he showed, some will say you're taking a bit of a risk because you're going off basically a 5-month sample size. But I think it shouldn't get lost what he brings is, like, I think him and Cade had like the most lobs. Like, their pick and roll is one of the best in the NBA. It got taken away a little bit in the playoffs, but like, I think the rebounding is elite on both ends. I think the passing, like, I would extend him at 4-100. Now, whether he wants that, I would have a feeling JD thinks he's maybe a little bit more valuable in terms of annual earnings, but I would extend him. I would. But I think I know where you're at with this, but what are your thoughts?
So I agree with you. I think JD is the easier one to talk about here, simply because you got to see him fair and not, like, it's not fair. You know, we can't. It's not his fault, but Ivy did go down, so we just didn't get to see him. So I think JD is the easier one to talk about here. I think I do agree with you that if you could get him, if you can get Duren for 25, I think I probably would do that. So I look at the contracts that have been signed. We've seen some extensions from their draft class this summer. I believe Jabari Smith got 22.5 with Houston. I'm assuming JD will look at that and say, I want a little bit more than Jabari. So if you can get him for 4 years, 100, I think I probably would do that. I would try to push for 490. That's my comfort. Yeah. That would be like where I would want him at. But if you can go to 100, then it comes into the argument of, okay, do you really fight over this and then risk the chance of maybe the following summer he plays so great, now you have to pay I don't, let's just say like 33 a year, or so, like maybe he plays great and now you have to pay, like, would you rather do that, or would you rather pay him 4-year 100? Maybe it's a little bit of a risk, but maybe it could also be like a bargain of a contract a year from now. It's kind of like the stock market. You're kind of playing the games here, but I would probably feel comfortable with JD at 4 years 100. I think that's fine. I think who was it that brought it up? I think it was Nikias Duncan that brought it up. The thing is that I do still have some questions about the long-term fit, like 3 years from now, of Cade, Ivey, Ausar, Ron, and Duren. Like, that's your core. Like, do you think they'll eventually play together? And those kind of questions come in to play when you want to give all of them long-term money, but we don't need to get into that here. 4 years 100, I think I would give JD. And short, that was a long way of me getting there, but yeah.
No, I'm with you. Like, I would like to do a little bit less, but I think that's just a reasonable offer. That's not like if they went to him and said 4 years, 85 or something, like I feel like he would almost feel a bit disrespected. So, but like I do think whilst it's still a bit like lower than what JD would want, I could see him maybe taking that. Maybe he's just not interested at all. But I think if you're signing on JD, you're investing in the Cade, Ausar, JD, obviously, trio. And that's what you're going to build your team around. And I think Ivy can be a part of that. And I don't think that means you don't extend him, because you can still trade these guys ultimately. Like, you're just locking down the asset, the player, for additional years. So, but I do think in signing JD, extending him, it solidifies those three in particular, because I think Ausar is incredibly crucial to the whole team, but specifically Jalen Duren's success.
All right, so where do you stand? Let's get to Ivy. So Ivy is also up for extension. I've spoke about on the podcast, like I said earlier, I've heard where the Pistons stand right now in regards to the extensions. Where do you stand now with Ivy this summer?
This one's really tough. I think a lot of people I've heard would say, like, do the Jalen Green deal, which was it 3 years, 110? No, 3 years, 100?
It was around 3 years. It was 3 years, I think 33 a year, somewhere around there, 33 to 35. I can look it up right now, but I believe that's the number. That
sounds correct. I think he can get to that value, but I would, coming off a broken leg.
The numbers are 33, 36, 36.
Yeah. Okay. So I think like JI can be definitely worth that. It's really tough. I'm very high on JI, so people don't kill me. But like, I'm just like coming off the injury he just had. I think he will be fine. I think at the time it was the leg break. It shouldn't be seen as a long-term thing. I think just with all the questions surrounding him, I would like almost try and offer him the 100 maybe. And I'm not a cap expert. I don't know how that impacts the future, but I think like that's like a nice bet. I probably don't think Jay would want to take that. I think maybe he would want to bet on himself just to prove he's worth more. But I also understand the argument for the 3-year contract at around 30 million. It's really tough because we just spent 10 minutes almost talking about how the sample sizes and the data, it's just, we don't have enough. So I almost don't want to be rushed into a deal with JI.
Yeah. I'm more if I had to extend one, I'm more comfortable extending Jalen Duren, just because we've seen him, obviously, because we've seen him be a part of them. And again, this is no fault of Jay. He can't help getting hurt. It's unfortunate. But I would feel more comfortable at this point extending JD if I had to extend one. I'm probably in the ballpark. I'm probably taking it into the season, both of them. With JI, this is my concern. Removing my thoughts on wherever we're at with him as players. Some people are higher. Some people are just removing that completely. This offseason, I feel like, has really, the moves of other teams have really really showed us how the league looks at players like Jaden Ivey, like the combo guard. The reason why I bring that up, Colin Sexton, who he's much older than Jaden Ivey, but I think he's probably a better scorer than Jaden Ivey right now. He's a more efficient scorer right now than Jaden Ivey. He's on an $18 million contract. He got moved with the second-round pick for what, Nurkic it was? Or like he had to get a second-round pick attached to him. And he was an $18 million. He's $18 million expiring. Then you go to Malik Monk, who I think is a really good player, like just was like almost won 6 Man of the Year a few years ago. He's making $18 million this year, 20 the following year, and no one wants him, apparently. Like the Pistons could have had him. They said no. Apparently nobody wants Malik Monk. There was another scoring guard that got moved. I forget who it was. Was it Norman? I'm forgetting who the guard was that
Norman
got moved
Powell was,
also, but
yeah.
no, yeah, I'm just the kind of scoring guards that we've seen. There's just it seems like the league is putting a devaluing this the combo scoring guard, and that's what makes me more hesitant. More than even the again, like I said, more than the where do you stand on him as a player? Where do I stand on him as a player? Just his archetype. It seems like, and then obviously Jalen Green was like used as a just salary matcher basically for the Suns trade. Just it seems like the archetype of that kind of player just is not being seen as ultra valuable. So then if you do give him a higher contract, because like the whole idea around this, and I brought this up before in the podcast, is okay, well, if you overpay him a little bit, you can still trade him, and people, it is what it is. My question is, well, if Colin Sexton is having to be attached with the second, and just no one wants Malik Monk, there has to be something, and maybe there's something else that we don't know about. I just refuse to believe no one just wants Malik Monk, but maybe it is just the player. If those guys aren't movable at that contract, how can I be confident that at 25, 26, 27, that Ivy would be movable? Maybe he improves and he's worth it. That would be the best case scenario. But if it doesn't, how am I supposed to believe that it would be movable? That's my concern here.
And all those players you mentioned, Malik Monk, Colin Sexton, if we want to throw Norman Powell in there, I think the Clippers moved him because of the contract situation. But and they want to get Bradley Beal. But all of those guys, are they starters on a real playoff team? Are these scoring guards? If you aren't like a solidified, known starting player that's 6'3", 6'4" that can score, and Sexton's a little bit shorter, but it's and Jaden Ivey kind of fits into there right now. We didn't get to see him in the playoffs. I think he can be better than all those names we mentioned. I think you probably think the same if he hits his peak. I think he's a fringe all-star if he hits his peak. But he just hasn't been able to show it. So it's it is a bit scary with how the market looks to commit. Because I think it's the salary, the annual salary, but I think it's also the years. And I'm not don't report at all. I don't know anything, but I feel like maybe why Trajan pivoted from Monk, and you look at the deal he offered even Duncan Robinson with the partial guarantees. No one wants to, with this second apron, commit long-term to anyone that's not going to be, I feel just a starting, unless they're a superstar, a true starting player that can win you games or be on a winning team. It feels like it's scary to commit multiple years and tens of millions of dollars to those guys, because it's a lot harder to get off those contracts now. That Colin Sexton ones, that's crazy.
Yeah. And the other player I was thinking of actually was Anthony Simons. Anthony Simons, who is one of the worst defenders in the league. I get it, but he's a great scorer. He's a great offensive player, and he's basically being moved for nothing. And the Celtics still don't want him. They're still trying to move him. So that's just where my concern is. Again, if Ivy hits and he's great, then he'd be, $25 million. That's fine, and that's worth the contract. Obviously, that would be, obviously worth the contract. But I think for me, I think I would probably go into the season with them and just wait it out and play the safe game. But I think what you brought up is a great point, especially with the CBA. I think Keith Smith said that a lot of teams are kind of eyeing this 2027 year. I forget for what exact reason. It had something to do with the salary cap, maybe not jumping as much as they think it was going to jump now. So teams are kind of trying to keep that long-term salary, clean, and they're kind of scared to commit more money because they don't know exactly how much is going to jump now. So that's, and even without that, just the new CBA with the second apron and stuff, it just makes committing long-term money scary. If you're not completely 100% bought in, it's just scary to commit long-term money and get yourself locked into a core that it's just the second apron and the new CBA. It's just made it a lot more, I think you have to be a lot more careful with each move you make. And I think that it's kind of shown by, like you said, the savviness of that deal he gave Duncan Robinson. That was a really savvy deal. That when you first saw it, it kind of looked like, okay, maybe you paid a little much. And then it's like, oh, well, it's basically non-guaranteed the last 2 years. So great contract. But Jack, is there anything else you want to hit on before we wrap it up here?
I think they one of the two gets extended.
Do
Just a
you,
guess.
if you want to go ahead and pick, you want to pick
I think
one?
I think Jalen Duren signs an extension. That's purely just a
Okay.
guess. I feel like he does. And I think I think he will want to go and prove that he's worth more than probably whatever the Pistons offer him.
Yeah, I think
Just a
that's
guess.
I
Prediction.
I think yeah, I think I probably align with your thinking there. I think that's probably what we'll see happen. But I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen every single day. You guys can go follow Jack Pistons Jack on Instagram, on Twitter. Jack, appreciate you coming on, man. Always a lot of fun. We'll try to have you on again before the season starts up and get a season preview. But again, appreciate all of you guys making Locked On Pistons your first listen. Hit that subscribe button. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Stay safe out there. And until next time, peace out, everybody.